Codebook and Revit Make a BIM Baby, presented by Marnie and Tessa. They convinced us that they were professionals at this sort of thing, and their bio appears reasonably professional, but there's just something that's not sitting with me. I'm not quite sure what it is. Marnie is the BIM Model Manager with HASSELL, and Tessa is a health architect also working with HASSELL, and they're going to take us through how to wrangle some data out of Revit into Codebook and back again. Yes, I shall leave you to it. Thank you.
Now I'm going to try not to hide behind this because
that'd be awful. Hiding behind this,
especially if you're Marnie size. I should be on that side. Everybody look at Marnie. So anyone that saw our lineup, photos might have thought that we weren't deadly serious about what we do and about Revit and Codebook. So as you can see today, we are deadly serious about what we do. Now, we've learnt a great deal about how to animate. I was doing all the hard work while the raccoon was figuring out how to do these ones. So essentially what we're going to do is have a look at Revit as that flavour of BIM, which Marnie can talk to Revit. And I will talk a little bit about Codebook and how those two beasts might meet. Oh, I like that. Good. Down one?
Yeah.
So this is one that we stole off a health and design conference that we saw last week, which I thought was really clever. What we'll do is what I just
exactly that.
Exactly that. And the way we're going to do that is talk to you about why you might want to use Revit and why you might want to use Codebook. Talk about how you would use the both of them, and we're going to do it in a little bit of a discussion format, which we think represents lunchroom conversations all around the world. Oh.
May I put a bit of volume?
Volume. I never get told to talk louder.
Oh.
I always get told to talk louder. So, and then when you might want to use the two, because being that they just dance around each other through the whole cycle of the project, sometimes you can choose to use parts with other parts and not other parts. Very clever. And look at what we can do, and then we'll tell you a few things about what you might not want to do. Right. Now I'm going to read this because I wrote it and I felt really clever when I wrote it, and I was thinking of Danielle, my colleague in the front row there, and it's about having an elevator pitch. So Codebook is a crazy smart database that captures all aspects of a developing brief before linking that data to the design response in order to validate the requirements against the design and a whole lot of other cool stuff. What does Revit do, Marnie?
And I actually stole this from the website because I thought everyone here probably knows what Revit does anyway. So it is Autodesk software. It's specifically built for building information modelling, which is why we're all here. Empowering design and construction professionals to bring ideas from concept to construction with a coordinated, hopefully, and consistent model-based approach.
Yours sounded better than mine. Right, so at this point we thought we might break it down, because essentially why we're all here is because we have someone that wants something and we need to interpret that into something that someone can build. So we usually have a client that doesn't really know what they need to give you. We need to try and bring that out of them. So this is a really basic example of a small child that needs a room for his cot, for his bears. So we start collecting the brief. They've come to us. They need to. They've got an idea about what they want, and we have to try and figure out what that is. And we're going to use these tools that we're talking about in order to bring that to the real 3D world. So once we've got all that information and we start to get an understanding that we can actually help them and that we've got the tools to do that, we'll start forming the brief and we'll usually get that signed off. And then in my world I would usually hand that complex bunch of information to someone like Marnie, who will try and model crazy stuff like that. Model everything.
No.
Almost.
Right, so obviously costumes, beasts, it's all working for us right here, right now, but the nature of the beast, as we all know, in projects they are beasts and they can get out of control. So the things you need to know is you're not always going to have the information. That is just ridiculous, that never happens. You're going to have to start designing, error, don't worry about that, we'll fix that, some shape and form. Like there's a building, we've got how many square metres, this department needs to be this big. A lot of this might relate to health, obviously. You might not get any access or immediate or direct access to clients. You're assuming what they want. So you need to start producing something. What is it you need to start producing? And with all those things there, how do you start? What do you do with it? But if you've already got something in Codebook, which is a basis from something similar, at least you can start somewhere. And you might have to give room data sheets or schedule accommodations or start sketching, but you're not sure actually where to start. So you've got a base with your Codebook database.
So why use Codebook? And I could actually spend the rest of today talking about why I would use Codebook. So I've tried to bring that. This is the biggest slide, and you don't feel like you need to read it. I'm going to read it. No, I'm not. I'm just going to say a few in summary. Essentially, I needed, as a health architect, something to store my brief in so that I could validate it against my design. And I'd come from the archaic world of using Excel, and where all of that information was stored, and I would be manually doing this one with drawings and with CAD files, and it wasn't a lot of fun. And I also noticed this other little phenomenon where lots of graduate architects and student interior designers or whoever would get that shitty job with don't swear, with a highlighter and have to count chairs, that sort of thing. So when I saw what Codebook could do, when it could do a lot of that stuff for you, it made a lot of sense to me. So essentially that's why I would use Codebook, and that's why I would recommend using Codebook. And at the core of that discussion, I think, is about resourcing, where we have a lot of big jobs, lots of roles to fill, not a lot of people wanting to do them, and you give that person that highlighter too many times and they're going to slowly lose the will to live, and they'll be the ones, Gen Y, that will come into the next place of employment and say, I want to do a beach house, I don't want to do hospitals or schools
yes.
or whatever. So that's why I would use Codebook, and like I said, there's a million other reasons, some of them listed there, but I think they're the critical ones. Why would you use Revit, Marnie?
Yes. Well, I think most of us here know why you use Revit, and there's people sitting in the room here, I can see, that know probably more than I do about it. But why are we using it is because it's the latest and greatest. We've got rid of all the paper and tracing and stuff, except you keep the yellow ones because they're fun at the beginning with a fat pen. But you need to move with the times. You need to choose one of these programs. This BIM layout is all about not driving Revit or ArchiCAD or whatever down anyone's throat, but I use Revit, and I have done for some time. I think it's a great program, and it's not just 3D pretty pictures anymore, it's information. That's what the big I is, and you can put as much information in it as you want, or little. And that's where we get into the 3D, 4D, 5D, 6D world that most people would know about. But you need to understand that BIM is not Revit, BIM is not Codebook, BIM is all those things, and all that information from all those databases that you're throwing together. I like Revit, I think it's great, it does all those things, and it makes pretty pictures as well, which is really handy.
Bing! Yours.
Mine, yes. I've been there, done that, doing this for a long time in projects, not always Revit, but this one, out of control, happens a lot. So how do you manage that? Well, obviously, again, I'm talking to people that have done this. You need time to prepare. You need a stable set of Revit templates, Codebook templates, just Office protocol, everyone knows that, but it's very, very important when you start getting into this BIM world that those things are critical, because that's where it goes pear-shaped and you just don't want to come back from that. Obviously, library base for Revit and for Codebook are critical to this. I'm not going to stand up here and say that Codebook is the best thing in the universe and so is Revit, and it's going to press the button, the big red button, and life's good. It's not that. It's about the same people doing the same job they've always done in a much smarter, clever, hopefully quicker way to get that information out. And if you don't do all those things, you don't get that time, it's not going to do it for you. It's as intelligent as you make it. So you put the information in, you'll get it back out. You've got to take that time and force the people that you might be working with to understand that this is critical to the startup of how you do it.
And that, I think, represents a lot of the lunchtime conversations that are had, particularly at the beginning part of a project. If you get people that know, like Marnie and a little bit like me, who have that banter about what you should do and when you should do it, that's when things can run a little bit more smoothly. If you're flying solo in any one of those, I think you don't have as much chance. But if you get a good combination of people making the right decisions at the start, which is critical, I think we've all come, or I've certainly seen quite a few projects in my time, not all of them, but I think the ones that are most successful are the ones where that dialogue happens early on about how the two are going to work together. Whatever it is, whether it is using anything to do together in a collaborative...
Massive respect for the database, basically.
Yeah. So now we look at how we might do that. So, and this is really very simple. Anyone that's seen a Codebook demo will know. But essentially, my favourite way of starting out in a project is to form the brief first, or form the framework of the brief. And sometimes you're lucky enough to get a schedule of accommodation handed to you. It's never import ready, you need to dumb it down. And the more time you spend on that schedule dumbing that down, when you're talking big projects, so there might be 8,000 rooms or more, or 12,000 I think in the HOK project. Dumbing that down and making it a little bit smart before you import it into Codebook, and then you're flying.
Prepping it before you paint it.
That's right. I can't stand doing that prep before painting. Anyway, pay someone else to do that.
Yes.
Another way that you can start your Codebook database at the briefing phase is importing directly from the health facility briefing system. Not my favourite. There's a lot of stuff there. Essentially, you're taking 5 Excel spreadsheets, and because HFBS, they can change any of those at any time. So the way that we can import from that is usually a reinvent every time someone does that, which is a bit painful.
If anyone doesn't know what the HFBS is.
Which is, does anyone not know what the HFBA is? 2, 3. I feel like we're bidding for cows. I'll take 2. HFBS is a system that was, and I might not have this entirely correct, developed by the New South Wales company, and it essentially is what feeds and creates the Australasian Health Facilities Guidelines. I do most of my work in health. So do you now?
Now, yes.
Once you get sucked into the health vortex, there's no getting out, I find. So the health facility briefing system allows you to create a brief for health projects, and I think it's available worldwide, actually. It's a very, very powerful briefing tool, a fantastic briefing tool, actually, to form that. It's also got a big component of asset management and registry worldwide for the big stuff.
I think they're actually now trying to get it to work with Revit as well. I've seen a demo, but I haven't used it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
The guys in our office in Sydney have to use it. We don't have to use it. It's a New South Wales government health thing where you have to actually use it.
Yeah.
I've used it. I don't like it. Not when you have to try and get it out of Codebook and put it into Revit.
I can't say that too loudly.
Yeah.
I look biased.
Yes.
I like to say it's a great briefing tool, but from there, I find it's a little bit...
To go from there to Codebook to
Revit. I like the flow that Codebook allows. But however you start it, another way anyway is to import from a previous project, which is probably my second favourite, only because I think you move around projects and companies as you go, and you can't take anything with you when you do that. So I'm forever starting up a fresh library and fresh data, learning all those lessons all over again. There's a lot of lessons that you can learn from doing things wrong, and I did quite a few things wrong the first time, about 10 years ago. So that's how I would start a Codebook database. There's a lot more that's going on in parallel with all of that when you're thinking about how you might start.
And obviously all of our slides are very serious and informative. But what we're basically trying to say is when you're getting in there and you're about to do it, and the how, it can be a roller coaster, and a roller coaster of different types, and how you deal with that and how your team deals with that. This dude in the middle, he's lighting a cigarette, his mate's smoking one, he's pretty chilled. He's obviously done this before, he's not bothered about that curly one at the top where I would actually lose my stomach, I wouldn't do very well, not good. And the little dude, he is more like me, actually. I used to like them, now not so much. But he does not look like he's enjoying himself. But what we're trying to say is, Revit, Codebook, we're hoping to be the smoking dudes. Don't smoke, that's bad for you. But we're hoping to be those dudes where we've got this sorted. We've got the Revit model happening, we've got the Codebook thing happening. These guys are talking to each other, it's linking, it's buy this and buy that.
It's still going to be a roller coaster anyway.
Yes, but how do we make that roller coaster a little less curly? That's basically what we're trying to say there.
touch
It's
more on
not
that later.
well.
No, he's not well. Oh, how would you do that, Roku?
So the other way you can do it is you can be working on the project, you've got your model set up,
When
they've
she
told
says
you...
do it, she means to start a Codebook database. So I've covered
Yes.
3 ways that I would do them. But sorry,
Yes.
over to you.
I'm very good at that. Clearly that's why I'm wearing this and no one will recognise me. But you would have a sketch, you've got walls, you've got rooms, you've got stuff going on. Someone said I need 37 rooms in my emergency department. These are roughly the areas. You've got a funky looking building and it's all working there. And you've got area schedules, you've got everything working. You could even go to the point where you start, you know, saying that one's going to have vinyl, that one's going to have carpet. But you've basically got the basis there. Then you open up your Codebook and you say, let's bring this stuff into Codebook. Very simple import process, and it will bring across whatever you choose to map to it. So that might be just the room name and the area and the department and the numbers, room numbers or something like that. But you can bring that straight in.
SOA?
Schedule of accommodation. Yeah, sorry, this is very health based, but
there's a lot of...
it's where it started. Well, Codebook started
abbreviations, you know.
with that, didn't it?
Yeah.
Codebook was started from a health dude in England.
Yes.
Yes, and that's why it's based mainly around that. We have our offices in Brisbane have actually used it for other styles of projects as well now. So it's basically a tool that you can use for anything that's repetitive or that needs data sheets.
Management of data,
Yeah.
data management. Lots of information.
So basically that's the scenario where you've got your plan with your rooms in there, then the top left with the highlights, that's the parameters. So you would choose the parameters that you want to bring across, and there's a little tick box that says from or to BIM. So basically at any point you can change those and say, now I want to bring it from Codebook, I've developed my room data sheets, now I want to add all those finishes and equipment, and you push it back across to Revit. But if we choose to do it the Revit way to begin with, we just bring that information as a basis into there. And that is, again, we use a lot of colours in Revit. Obviously anyone who's used it, it's quite simple. If you've got a parameter, you can put a colour on it in your room. So these are ways that we inform, test, take to the client meetings, whatever, where you've got floor finishes, you've got room types, room layouts, and then that sort of information you can bring in, and you've already got the first floor finish, the first room name, and the layouts, and your pods.
Pods. Pods. So you need a strategy for when you decide to use what to. We missed a word in there. Whoops. What to use when, essentially. So, and that's, I guess, what this discussion is about. We know what both things can do, and we need to know when we're going to mesh them in together. And one of the key things there that we haven't spoken about so much, which we will, is what the client expects from. It might be a client that's had a big client that has had other architects work for them, so their expectations will be aligned with something else. So you need to get an understanding of what they want to get out of you as the people controlling these two weapons, in order for you to know what to put in. Otherwise you find that you get this whole mix match of information, and sometimes poor decisions are made based on a demand, where I think what I've promoted certainly in the last few years is to open that dialogue with the client, go, yes, we can do that, but it will mean
Yes.
3 resources down for 6 days to put that dot where
And
you
that-
want it.
Some examples of that might be just the format of the room data sheet.
Yes.
Again, we're talking healthy kind of things, but and what that looks like. And they might like it to have like columns that do this and that.
That's one of the biggest ones.
It's not a standard as it comes out. Doesn't mean you can't do it, but that's the kind of thing we're talking about, where get the information if you can straight up. Are they going to want schedules of this? Are they going to want to compare that? And what do they want it to look like? Just so your people can do that in prep, so that you're not sitting there all night rerunning room data sheets and reformatting them.
True that. The other thing is deciding when you want to link. So if you can imagine you've got your Codebook database, you've imported it for one of my 3 ways. As soon as you import it or create your Codebook database using Marnie's way, you already have that link, because Codebook's established that link when you import it from the Revit project. So if you import it from Schedule of Accommodation, Health Facilities Guidelines, which is essentially the same thing, or a previous project, you can start running room data sheets straight away because you've got your brief information shaping up. You're going to user group meetings, you're collecting a whole heap of information, and someone over there is frantic with yellow trace, and then they're trying to do amazing things like modelling teddy bears in preparation for the project that's coming. So we're all careering at the same spot, at different speeds, but in the same direction.
But you also
from opposite places.
We also don't have to. Those can be happening in isolation at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because you might not have a model. You might just have room data sheets. You might be just building that side of it. Doesn't mean that you have to have this link from day one, but you can link it from day one. So it depends what you're trying to get out.
Which is the argument. There's another one that we often have around the lunchroom table.
We argue a lot.
People say, well, so why would you use Codebook when Revit can do it all? But I'm like, well, Revit's still sitting collecting dust in the cupboard while people are throwing yellow trace around. I need something smart and intelligent to collect all my briefed information so I can start running reports on and getting information and filtering like massive amounts. We're not talking carports here, we're talking big projects. So I can start understanding what the impact is of the decisions that are happening in a bigger scale.
But also taking those bits of paper and those room data sheets to those meetings so that they've got something to talk to as well.
Yeah.
They're sitting there with a blank look on their face. Oh, yeah, I want a hospital bedroom. This is what I have in the one I've got. But, you know, okay, so do you have... Oh, yeah, I forgot. I need one of those. There's a list there. There's that. Oh, what do you have? Oh, no, we have vinyl. Oh, what rubber? Well, we didn't use this. You know, you've got something to talk to, and it's there. It's ready. While Go Glow is fat pen. You know,
It's blocking
that's
stuff
never
in.
going to work. That door's not going to work. Anyway, yes.
So at some point, with all these people careering in the one towards the one object from different directions at different speeds, we need to understand when we're going to link that Codebook database to the Revit model. And I know Marnie and I we've had a lot of discussion about when you would. I want to link it now. When I say now, because I've got all this information pouring out of me. I've got a lot of people asking me for a lot of information, all different kinds of information. So I want to link it now because I want to start giving them some feedback about how the design is travelling, and they want to hear that. They want to know how the design is travelling. They want to see it's a very transparent process. So I will always say that and every project's different, every project team's different, every client's different, but if we generalise a little bit, I would always say that I would look at linking it's a room by room link. We'll look at linking around the stage where the blocking and stacking has stopped, where the rooms have settled down a little bit. There'll still be movement of rooms. We're in the final stages of a project, and we're still moving rooms. So there'll still be, but you don't want to be moving hundreds of rooms or thousands of rooms. You want to have it sort of kind of gelled. So I usually say nearing the end of sketch design.
Yep.
And because this is what I want to see this one, and every time I click on the room, I'll get what the required area is and what the design area is, and I can run a report. I can do one of those pretty drawings in the views in Revit where I can have all the colours show me what's under area and over area. But at the very basic level, as soon as I link, I get this one where Codebook will tell me that all the rooms that are black are linked. So I've got a brief room and I've got a design room, so we're travelling okay. All the yellow rooms are, this is the new part of version 10 or 11, where you can send your rooms over to Revit, so Codebook knows that they're in your Revit model but not placed. Does everyone know what that means? Do we all know a lot more about Revit than I do? And the bedrooms are briefed, we need them, they've been signed off, but they're not in Revit yet and they're definitely not placed.
So it could mean that someone forgot them and the building's not now big enough.
True. So I will start using just the visual tools of the initial link, which is what you can see there, to start seeing how my project is travelling against my brief. Make sense? You see my tail? So
Very serious.
Serious. So, I like that one. So the other thing that we need to do once we're linking is we're still aligning with our client those other insignificant things that are travelling along this process. And we've mentioned it a few times, and I think I've got some examples. So this is talking about aligning the client's view, because we know what Revit can produce. I know what Codebook can produce. We've got an idea of what they can produce together, but does the client? Because the client doesn't need to see all those pretty pictures and that lovely little black, red, and they want the output. They want the reports.
They want to know that you've got all those rooms in there that they asked for, and that they can see what area they are.
That's right. And the builder wants a whole bunch of other reports. So At a very basic level, one of the first reports you'll put out is a schedule of accommodation. That's an Excel spreadsheet, you can make it whatever colour you like. But these ones, these room data sheets that come out in either Excel or in Word, are the ones that everyone gets so excited about. Oh my lord, I have worked for quite a few different clients, and you'll get ones going, oh, I really want a row of pink elephants around the department, or I want some daisies in the corner. And I've always been more interested in the validity of the information, but sometimes that's a little unique. I think when you're looking at hundreds of thousands of these sheets of paper, maybe that's probably where they're coming from. But they don't realise that this was the old Codebook report, so for 20 years you didn't have a choice, which I thought made it really easy. Because people go, oh, can we have pink elephants and I'm like, no, moving on. It's about the information.
Yes.
So aligning, and so these are just examples of, there's about 1 billion reports that you can get out of Codebook, which are all reporting on the link or whatever that magic stuff is that's happening in those previous screens between the connection of Codebook and Revit. So here are room data sheets. So you would bring these to your meeting and go, how do you feel about this? And sometimes it's a little bit of conditioning the client too.
Yes.
So that you
helping them to understand what you want is what they want.
Yes. We should have put that on the slide. Remember that, Danielle? Did you write that down? Oh, good.
Excellent. Yes.
Yeah, I've already forgotten it, but that's really good. This is the same room data sheet as before, but in a different format. This one is cheating. It looks a little bit like that website called the Accommodation Health Facility Guidelines room data sheets, because when they were developed, everybody wanted to see this one.
Yes.
So we developed a format that would allow us to do that. It's slightly smarter in that you can't have duplicate codes, whereas you can on the ones at that other creature. And the green will tell you what's not a template. There's no way of templating in the other one. Anyway, that's getting down into too much detail. This would be an example of what you might want to give the builder, probably more the builder than the client, as a door schedule. So you're starting to get those expectations aligned. And it also means once I show that, means I've got to use Codebook to do it.
Yes.
Which is, I've decided the only way to get people to do that is to bulldoze them with the door schedule.
Yes.
Because it is the cleverest tool. If you don't use Codebook for anything else, just use it for door scheduling. I did make eye contact with Derek about 50 times then. I know that he's been buried under a rather large door schedule of late. And of course there's the infamous room layout sheets, which
before you go there...
Oh, did I skip one?
Tess? No, I was just going to say, because I know there's Revit people in this room, why is that better than using Revit? Because we all know Revit can do schedules. It won't put that little box, pretty picture. No,
and I actually don't use those little pretty pictures, which I've just done with thumbnails. But
yes.
Well, you can. There's tools, and there's those framey ones. They're cute too. But I once again want all that other information. But essentially, if you can imagine, you can choose as someone setting up Codebook, and you would do this once for all your projects. You choose all of the stuff, and this goes for a kilometre that way as far as you might want it to, and each line represents a door in a room. So I want to get that briefed information, I want to manage it holistically. I want to say, okay, I want to create, let's say big hospital, 40 door types, and each of the door types will have these ones, all the information to do with that door. I want to apply them, and then in Codebook I can say, okay, show me all the dirty utilities. Apply the same template. The level of management of putting that information together is brief. Whether you do that in Revit or not,
well, that's what I say, because obviously we can get, we have parameters in your doors. You can have as many kilometres of parameters in your doors in Revit as you choose to as well. But what I think the people that have never used Codebook but they've used Revit don't get is you can have 40 door types in Revit and they can all have these things in there, but what you don't get is when the person puts that door into that room with no regard for this thing here in the brief and what the actual clients ask for, and that they want a window in that and they want it this size. Someone's just swapped the door out thinking, oh yeah, that's it, it's 820, that's the door I want. But this one tells you that, hang on a minute, that's an observation room and I can't see in it, so it's not much use to me. So you would have that briefed in there and it's going to tell you that, hey,
it'll flag that it's different. You can also, in Codebook you would say, okay, this door needs to be a minimum of 1400 clear opening. Codebook will measure that and whack a big red circle on it if it's under that. So you can start using Codebook to validate not only your equipment and your data, but things like doors, and I'm very passionate about the doors in Codebook, more so recently.
Yes.
After doing it not with Codebook, back to okay. But yeah, there's a whole Ricky Lake show on doors. It's a very simple,
Which we're doing tomorrow.
Yeah, very simple way of managing doors that I haven't seen replicated outside of Codebook yet. C-sheets. Does anyone know why they're called C-sheets? You should. You're the only one that should. Oh yes. Danielle's doing it's not a lab, it's a...
It is a lab, but I'm not quite sure it's going to be a lab yet, so watch that space.
Oh.
She's going to show you how to make these ones from the Codebook database. So we probably won't talk about that too much, but this is really just aligning expectations again. Your client, may or may not have expected to see a little 3D view, or you can put your reflected ceiling plans on there as well. So it's about aligning expectations again and putting the outputs in front of them early on.
Just a heads up on that method, that you could end up with, in a health facility, with 1,000 or 1,200 of those sheets.
Yes.
Yes.
And then the management of those becomes interesting. Give me a set.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to produce
Yeah.
1,200 A3s.
And
Yes.
So
it
that's
used to
an
be...
interesting side effect of
Yes.
that part.
It is, but I don't... Oh, it's gone. I don't know... and I've just recently come west of the border. Is it that way? Yes?
Yes.
But on the east side, these are a project deliverable. You can't not do them. You don't have to do this one, that's just showing off. And I think, and those of you who knew Codebook version 8.2, which is what I grew up on, is when I did, and this is why I was so sold on it. I'd been not hand drawing, but CAD drawing room layout sheets for thousands of rooms that you'd have to go and update the cloud. It got a little bit tedious. Actually got really tedious very quickly, which is where you saw people dropping off, the will to live, and dropping off the building.
Yes, literally.
And young architects were going back to school and going, I want to be a teacher instead. This is awful. And I saw this button, this English guy, slightly pasty, a little bit rotund. Don't tell him I said that.
No.
And definitely pasty, and with a rolly bag, all the signs of a true nerd.
Yes.
And he showed me all this, lots of these, schedules, and I had to fill out, and I didn't get it. I was an architect, I do those ones much better, and then I remember this button, and I hear that music that goes, whoa! It said create, and he was doing his nerdy thing, I don't know how to do that nerdy, and he pressed this little button called create, and while I was sitting there choking on my coffee, Codebook drew that in front of my eyes, and then I was like, I did this one, can it do 10? Watched it. Can it do 100? Watched it. And then I got to the end, very, very quickly later, I would drop a whole project of thousands of rooms, usually do department by department, and go home for the weekend.
Yes.
And when I got back, they were drawn.
You didn't know what that word
Did
was.
you check every elevation to make sure it was right?
Always check. Always check everything
Yes.
before. And what happens is, because you're not going to do that once, because some idiot's going to want that chair moved, and some clown wants that GPO lower, so it's going to change. And this plan, in the CAD world, definitely in the Revit world, will reflect that, but these will become outdated straight away.
Yes.
You have to rerun it, but that's okay because you're not losing lives doing that. You're filing your nails, it's big pina coladas.
Yes.
Barley.
Yes.
Pina coladas is how it works.
Sounds good though.
Yes, it is.
Pina koala.
One of our other friends.
Yes.
Could
I
make
don't
it
know if
today.
do that
Yeah,
one.
no.
I think I was wearing that.
Me.
That's good. So that was easy to do. And then you could apply things to that C sheet, like I would add notes or dimensions and put it on a very special layer called retained. So every time you rerun it, those things would be retained.
Yep.
So it didn't completely overwrite it. It had some smarts about it. I usually say that with a list, but it's the first smart about it.
And tell me, if I change the Revit model, will that sheet change?
Yes. That's the big difference between
Lovely.
the old and the new. Those are all moving with the bed. My bed moves. It's good. I like
Talking
it.
to each other.
Yeah,
Yes.
this one, you need to go and see that one. She's
she's
the world leader in C sheets.
I know.
But what I will say about that one for people using Revit is everyone knows that those 3D things that you put in there, obviously if you move the plan, it's going to miraculously before your eyes move in the elevation. But what you also know if you are using Revit is that you have to tell it that you want those elevations. So you plonk your little elevation marker in and you tick all the boxes it creates them for you beautifully. You then throw them onto a sheet, you then cut the little plan out, throw it onto a sheet, create a 3D model, throw it onto a sheet, create a schedule, throw it onto the sheet. But what Codebook, and you'll find out tomorrow if you go to Danielle's, will do that for you but still be live. So she'll explain that much better.
Yes. Yes. Whoops. I'm going to be there.
But they're all excited, they're going to
wearing
come.
this.
There's unicorns in my presentation, not cows.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah.
We were her inspiration. Right then. Traps for young players. That is a whole 3 weeks, I think.
Yes.
We would sit there, sat there this morning going, what are the traps? Usually they just roll off our tongue in the thousands. But we got a little bit tongue-tied, I think. I think we've spoken about quite a few of them, but I think, and everyone will have a different view on this, but because I have the loudest voice, mine will be first. You need a library gatekeeper armed with a machine gun.
Yes.
If those idiots don't do what you're... and in Revit, I don't know how this happens. I've heard it everywhere. Everyone talks about families. Corrupt families, bad families.
Childless
families, messy families.
Yes.
Those ones,
Yep.
every kind of... And I must admit, I'm still sitting over watching this phenomenon thinking, what the devil is with the families?
And the children?
There's a lot of palaver, and that's another reason why I would use Codebook, because Codebook seems to actually help you manage that
Yes, it does.
quite well, because...
It can go pear-shaped, out of control, nature of the beast.
I mean,
Yes.
she can say that one, because I'll get a smack if I say that one. Sometimes it can get a little messy with the families. Right, so that's my biggest one, I think, and setting up, the other one is setting up, making sure you've got everything in place, your regs in order for when you start your project. So I've always said that Codebook is a little bit front heavy. On your very first project, it's front heavy. I think on subsequent projects, not so much. But I think the first project that I ever did, I always had in my head that I was going to use all this information next. So I didn't put anything into my Codebook library that I couldn't use on the next project. So I developed clever little ways early on there to deal with that. So, and that one's still probably being used today.
And one of the main reasons for doing that and setting up, because all these BIM programs are all basically databases, and they've got funky cool front ends, or make sheets and do funky schedules, but at the end of the day it's all database. And if any database that you use, the information that you put in is critical that you actually audit it and sort it. If you are, one of the things that my pet hates is everyone's got an opinion about how they're going to name things or code things. But if you have a seat _ shower, someone else wants to call it a shower seat. It's exactly the same family, it's exactly the same critter that you're going to put in that ensuite, but someone's decided to call it something different. There's now 2 of them, and someone will use that one, someone will use that one. Now you've got trying to count them, and you've got 1,400 of those, and 2 of these. Where did they come from? They were in the library.
Can you still do the batch swap? I used to swap them out, because occasionally that would happen with CAD.
Yes.
You would say, we had a battery operated clock, and then some idiot had made a battery operated clock with a second hand, which they all have. So, and half the team had put 569 in a whole set of rooms, and the other half had put 700, it was even Stevens in a lot of clocks. And there's a tool in Codebook that said, take all those idiot ones and swap them with these ones.
Yes.
So I haven't looked to see if that's in
version 11. Have to be.
Yeah, I would have thought so. That's a handy tool for that one. And what about those families that you talk about with the ones? You'll all know about those.
Oh yes, the duplicate families, and they will just you'll have a 1 at the end of the name of the family in your Revit project, and most people won't know what that means unless they've been using it for some time. So they'll look down the list really quickly. They've got a deadline. It's 10:30. They want to go home, and they drag in a family from the box on the side and go, "I'll have one of those." But little do they know that because someone had loaded in a shared family with nested stuff, and anyone who knows is going to understand that. If you don't, then ask him over there. But you can create a duplicate. If it thinks, oh, I've got one of these, but you want me to put it in there anyway, it'll just put a 1 on it, so it's not ignoring you. It's letting you put it in there. But then 2 different people will use those 2 different things. Again, now you've got a schedule and you're trying to count it, and it depends on what you schedule it under, whether it's the code or description, but someone will decide that they're going to change the code on that. and because it hasn't affected anything else, it's because there's two of them. Now they're two different lots of chairs, it's the same thing. So those kind of stuff is really critical to this, and just commas, dashes, all that stuff is about databases, and that's the thing people sort of forget with Revit, I think, that because it looks pretty and it's 3D, and wow, look at that door, it's so cool. But the information is critical that you put in there, and that you do have an underscore and someone else doesn't have a dash, because that's then two different things.
I think essentially early on, if you come across something messy, you just think, I can continue the messiness, which is what happens on big projects. I think early on, all of those decisions need to be made consciously, and the precedent needs to be set so that other people follow it. Or the machine gun approach has worked.
Exactly, and that goes down to, depending on how, like most of the projects, the codebook side of it, it has services information in there.
Yeah.
So I've worked on projects where the consultants are actually in the room with you, it might be a bid or whatever. You say, this is this cool program called Codebook, can you please load it onto here, and you're going to use it. Some of them are not very happy about that, some of them love it because they've done it before. A lot of the English architects and that love it because they've used it before. So you get consultants, but if they resist, which some of them do, it has ways where you can export it out to an Excel spreadsheet. You can say, here's your columns, guys, don't be scared by the kilometres of columns, these ones are yours. You fill it out, give it back, we'll import it back into Codebook, which we can then link and sync back to Revit, so we can have those amount of GPOs or whatever it is in there. But they must be respectful of the database, and they can't say yes in this column and tick in another column or whatever it might be.
Yes,
because
there's a bit of that. And if it's sent to me, that's not my favourite thing in the world, exporting from Codebook and then getting someone to update it to import it. I prefer that they just put it in, give them access to the database, and sit in their seat and put the information directly into Codebook.
And that's your best though.
Codebook won't. Yes, no. Well, that's when I apply machine gun. But I find, like, given the Codebook won't let you do a yes with a capital and then a small and then tick, or there's about 5 ways I think you can say yes. And if you're in Excel and you've got all those options to you, and when you import that, there is the risk that all of those options will be imported into your library. So straight away you've just created something you want to throw away. So
because someone updating it then has a choice of 5 ways to say yes instead of 1, which they should have.
So the problem gets bigger.
Where your gatekeeper comes in.
So I don't usually tell anyone that you can import.
I've had to tell them because they just resisted too much, but yeah.
Yes, machine gun.
Which is the last line. Understand that if you put garbage in, you will definitely get it out.
And that's putting that. Yes, that is the number 1 technique of putting garbage in a database, is importing rush. Which is unfortunate. That's the end. How do we go for time?
It's 9 minutes.
Not badly. Not badly. So, I'm sure we've answered.
The end.
Sorry, do that. Oops. Like it. Oh. When she originally did that, only the cow got fatter. How come only the cow gets fatter?
Questions.
Or we could have answered them all.
Oh.
Where?
Just on your code, with your door schedule, does that contain the complete information, like all the door furniture, colours, treatments, finishes?
Anything that you want to put in there will come out in there. If you think of Codebook as a very smart but empty tool, like Revit, very smart, sort of comes empty. It'd be great if you could go, I want a Revit project for this brief already in a box.
Yes.
But essentially we're talking about 2 empty tools that have the ability to manage information really, really well, if the right people are steering them.
Yes.
But the same with Codebook. It's an empty database, so it will allow you to put, there's a whole bunch of the front ones where it talks about door width that aren't editable. So it's going to measure that family, that door family. You'll identify what door families are. It will measure that, so you don't get the option to do that, but all of them for kilometres on are anything that you want to make as part of your door schedule. And that's what I say. When I set them up for people, I will take one that they're already using and just replicate it in Codebook.
And then keep that for your next one, obviously, so you don't have to always start with an empty database. but you start with the basics. But that's also when you've got to be very careful, because people will just go cookie cutter style, and as we know, it's not all cookie cutters, so you have to have, you can't just change the name and put it out, it's a different project. But if you have someone that actually is auditing that and reviewing that, then you change your door furniture and you have a blue and a green door and do all that, but it's much quicker obviously once you've got it set up.
Yes, much quicker. I think when you start getting those results out too, because Codebook will then validate whether you've got, it'll say check all the rooms for a door. You might have 2 rooms, 2 doors briefed for a room, and it will flag that you've only got 1 and it's undersized. What else will it flag? There's a few things that
really critical tool which you don't get out of the box, you know, with using Revit, because and that's the other thing which we probably didn't mention, the equipment side of it, where this room needs these 42 items and they're required to be in this room.
So step aside.
So if you actually, when you link that room to that Revit model, and it says, I need those 42 things in that room, and I've got 12 of those rooms, you then, you might even see some action here, but then you ask it to compare the required equipment versus the designed equipment, and it will give you a report, and it will say, hey, you're missing a chair in that room, or it'll say, well, you've actually got a shower chair in this room, but you wanted a visitor's chair. So it will compare that for you, and you can see that in the list, which is critical to these large projects when you've got 6,000 rooms in the hospital and you're trying to audit all of that furniture. Someone who's driving the Revit model, they've just made a group and they know what's all in there. They plonk them all in there, all of a sudden they get a column. Unfortunate, but we have to use those sometimes to hold it up. Now all of a sudden that room is not exactly the same name, and you've ungrouped it or you've created a different group. This one will tell you that this group's different to that one now, so go and fix it and work around that column.
So when you say you've got a specific kind of room with a required fit,
yes.
Can you set up families of rooms? So say you've got an operating theatre and it's got a required. Is it easy to set up operating theatre type 1, type 2, type 3, where they use a family of parts but got some exceptions?
Yes, and there's different ways to do that. In Codebook, you would it's called an assembly, which is basically you can, when you bring it into Revit, you can do it as a group in Revit terms or not. So it will just plonk that in that room, but they're separate pieces now. But that Codebook still knows that assembly, because by using assemblies or unions as they're called in Codebook, you know that I want to change the operating theatre, and now I want to have a dual arm medical services pendant instead of a single arm. But because all of your operating theatres need to be exactly the same, you change that in the assembly, which then you still need to go to Revit. It's not going to go and delete that out for you. You still need to go and change that group in Revit. But it knows it's linked to all those families, and it knows that that dual arm pendant is now not in there. So go and get someone and find them to fix that. So that's basically what it's doing. It's just trying to help you do your job rather than highlighting someone sitting there counting chairs for 4 days. It's going to tell you that it's actually missing.
You know those wonderful phenomenons that happen when you're getting ready for something and you break the thing you created to show people stuff?
Yes.
Yeah, right, well, it usually happens to everyone, just not me. But
so any of you that are from the East Coast, they'll know that there was a very important game on last night. And we did win. So this is actually a product of that win, I think.
Yes.
Queensland.
Yes. There was a lot louder last night. It's one of
Yes, it was. What were you trying to show there?
I was just going to show, we've got the required equipment here. So you can group equipment in Codebook. So here, for example, you've got an intensive care, what do you call those things? Medical service panel.
Medical service panel.
And here you've got a group of equipment representing your hand wash basin,
which is a union in Codebook terms, and a nested family in Revit terms. So those things are always going to stay together. Your hand wash with your soap dispenser and your mirror and all that is now. But you can change that. You might decide you need a antibacterial hand wash as well as your regular. So you change that union and then they're all changed. Obviously you still need to update your Revit nested family, but it'll tell you if it's not there.
So here is where I do all that work while people are doing butter paper, and I'm doing the real work, I call it, getting the brief and interpreting and deciphering what is needed, and including a whole heap of guidelines and awkward things like that. So once we link and we've got those families in our model, one of the first things that happens is that clients want this much equipment and they don't realise the room is this big. So you're going to be missing quite a bit of that. So I'll say, have a look at what's in the room, and Codebook will list what it finds in terms of families. It'll tell me when it looked, and then I'm not going to compare those two because I'm done with highlighting. But Codebook will tell me what the difference is between the two. It'll say what I've got that in the Revit model that's missing. It'll also tell me what I've got missing from the Revit model. Make sense? You can also do funky things like you can see down the bottom. You can do transfer and future equipment, so that handy when you're doing renovations. So I might want to add a whole heap of dispensers to a hand basin, but I want to have the hand basin in my Revit model, but I don't want anyone to go order that. It's already there. So it'll put those in a lower list and never put them in a report as being required new. It's a brief glimpse. You'll see lots more fun stuff like that from West Australia's Codebook Queen over there, Danielle Curry, and her esteemed colleague who is not here, Andrew.
Cool. Well, thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
This is really advanced.